zoomed out.
Yeah.
I know, Nick, we had the call was it this morning or was it this afternoon?
It must have been this afternoon because it was this morning. It would be so long ago you'd have forgotten it by now.
So let's see, it's 7:00.
Yep.
We do have a quorum. So let's see, Steve. No, we're waiting for Marus.
I think he's the one that's missing.
Yeah, and I know he's definitely going to be on. So we'll give him just another minute to join.
Yeah.
He's usually early.
Yeah.
Nick, do you think he said he was going to come, but then he asked to recuse on the.
He's going to recuse, but that's down in.
That's down the later.
For
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, he has to show up.
Yeah. Let's
I
see.
mean, he
There
can
he
leave,
is.
but he has to show up.
Okay, here we go. Well, Marus, you connected? I see his name, so I'm going to make the assumption. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's November 17th, and I'm going to call the Planning Commission meeting to commence.
Recording in progress.
Thank you for the recording. Got it. Okay. So we do have a quorum. Just a couple housekeeping items. We have 2 new commissioners on tonight. We have Joe Beninato, if I pronounce that right, and we have Katie. Welcome to the Planning Commission. They have been appointed for next term. I think it's 4-year term. And we also have returning Marus, who has just finished serving a 4-year term. And I'd actually like to take a minute to thank Commissioner Ronit Bodnar and David Merrick, who served us really well. Ronit Bodnar for 8 years and David for 1 term of 4 years. But what was really significant about those terms is when you look at Los Altos, over the last 30 or so years, we have not had the growth like we have had in the last 4 to 6 years. We haven't had the change in state law. We haven't had the housing element. We hadn't had the downtown plan. So I really want to thank Marus and Ronit and David for shepherding in those tough projects. It wasn't always easy, but I think we're going to have really quality projects in the downtown and on the El Camino corridor. So, I want to thank them for their efforts and their service, and welcome back, Marus, and welcome to Joe and Kate. Okay, well, first thing is public comments for items that aren't on the agenda. We have had 2 submittals. Oh, Steve.
Commissioner Doran.
Yeah.
For the record, we do need to take a vote, sort of the quorum. We have to establish a quorum, so we need to have people
Do a roll call.
roll call. Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm on my way out and I forgot that.
We'll re-elect you and that will show you.
Go ahead. Do you want to call roll, Steve?
Yes. Let me get to my list. Commissioner Roche.
Here.
Commissioner Steinle.
Here.
Commissioner Ahi.
Here.
Commissioner Beninato.
Here.
Commissioner Disney.
Here.
Vice Chair Mensinger. I don't see her.
There she is.
Oh, okay. Sorry. She is here. Do we get affirmative there?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And last but not least, Chair Doran.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Now we have established our quorum. Mr. Wing has submitted a couple of letters to us on the Planning Commission. I don't see him on the call tonight, and asked us to consider some items regarding traffic calming measures and canceling collector street traffic. And we need to get back to him and let him know that the planning commission actually does not take action on those items. It does not come from us anymore. So if the staff would please let him know that these items are not going to be on a future agenda for planning commission, that would be greatly appreciated, and refer him to the appropriate department.
Thank you, Chair Doran. This is Director Zorns. I will relay that information to our resident.
That
I
would,
think you already haven't you? Yeah.
yeah.
I will reiterate.
Yeah, we tried to explain that the PTC it's just PC now. There's no T left.
Right, right. So we'll try that again, but we thank him for his letter and, actually is very comprehensive, analysis of those corners. It was great. Okay,
We'll have fun with it.
yeah, we can move on from that. And now we have a new Planning Commission liaison. And I think, Nick, would you like to introduce our new Planning Commission liaison?
Yes, thank you, everyone. So good evening, commissioners. Just briefly wanted to take the quick moment thanking Steve Golden for his work as our staff liaison to the Planning Commission while he was been serving as the interim planning services manager here at the city of Los Altos. We recently completed our permanent recruitment for the replacement of the previous full-time planning services manager, and that new staff member is Stephanie Williams, which I do think she's on the call.
Yes. I see.
Hidden, but Stephanie is going to be serving as the liaison for everyone moving forward. So this meeting, Steve will kind of help tag team the meeting, and then moving forward, Stephanie will be the one to help handle that moving forward.
Great. Well, welcome. We appreciate you being here. And Steve, we really appreciate all the hard work and effort. You juggled a lot last year. We had a lot of really tough sites and a lot of big meetings. So thank you for what you've done. And, we're glad to still have you on staff. And welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Want to
Nice
say
to-
a few words?
It's nice to meet you all. I'm Stephanie Williams. I've been with the city about a month now, and I'm happy to be here and to be the new staff liaison.
Great, thanks. Okay, moving on. Well, unfortunately, my reign as my reign as chair of the commission is up tonight, and we're going to have the election of the new chair and vice chair. I'm not sure of the rules on this. So Steve, is it just a straight nomination or?
Yeah, so usually what happens is there's a nomination for chair. That person usually either accepts or doesn't accept a nomination. There's a vote for the chair, and then there's a nomination for vice chair, and similarly accepts, and then there's a vote.
Great. Okay. Great. Well, I'd like to nominate our vice chair, Susan Menzinger, for chair for the, is it we're 2 years now. We're going on 2-year cycles. Yes or no?
It's it should be a 1 year, and it's supposed to be in October.
Right.
Looking back through the years, it hasn't always happened, but that's the norms, and in the commission handbook, I believe, is for 1 year in October.
Yeah. All right, so I nominate Susan Menzinger, and we should call for a vote. Oh, Steve, would you like to call for a vote?
Sure. Let me do that. Commissioner Steinle,
Yes.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes.
Commissioner Beninato,
Yes.
Commissioner Disney,
Yes.
Vice Chair Menzinger,
I guess I can vote on this? Sure.
Yes.
and Chair Doran.
Yes. Great. Do you accept, Susan?
I do accept. Thank you.
Great, great. I'd also like to nominate Commissioner Ahi as vice chair for the next year.
I'll second that.
Great. Can we take a vote on that, Steve?
Yes. Commissioner Steinle,
Yes.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Beninato,
Yes.
Commissioner Disney.
Yes.
I guess it's Vice Chair Dora now.
Or outgoing chair, darn, yes, I did. Great.
And incoming Chair Mensinger.
Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you. And it's been fun. It's been a pleasure to serve. And Susan and Mayrose, you're going to be great. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to them right now. And I will just become, my regular normal self.
Well, thank you, Shelley. You did a great job helping us transition. So thank you very, very much. You have a wonderful style of making things efficient and pleasant. So, okay, moving on. On the consent calendar, the next item is approving the Planning Commission minutes from way back in August 18th. Does anyone have any comments on those?
And the new commissioners,
Mm.
they can vote on the minutes, even though that they weren't present, because you're just voting on accepting them as the record of the meeting. You're not accepting them you're not approving them as to form. So you get to vote on the minutes. That was a change in the law a little while ago.
So are there any comments from any of the commissioners, or should we take a vote to accept them, to approve them? Okay, Steve or Stephanie, whoever's running this, if you could take the roll call.
Sure, I'll just continue.
Okay.
Commissioner Steinle,
Yes.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes.
Commissioner Beninato,
Yes.
Commissioner Disney,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ahi.
Oh, yes, I already said yes, but
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
You skipped Shelley, I think.
Sorry, yes, I'm a little out of order now. Commissioner Doran
Yes.
and Chair Mensinger.
Yes.
So-
Okay, so the minutes are approved from the August 18th meeting. I think now we will move into the one public hearing we have tonight, which has to do with 129 First Street. So let's open the public meeting. I believe there will be a staff report first.
That's correct. My name is Jia Liu, Associate Planner. So I'm going to present this conditional use permit.
Sorry,
So-
I just wanted to mention, I need to recuse myself since I live within 500 feet. So I'll just turn off my video and I'll be back for the reports and future
Yeah.
agenda items.
Okay,
Thank you. So much.
thanks, Mayrose.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This is Jia Liu, Associate Planner. Before you, I'm going to present the conditional use permit, file number COP22-0002 for your consideration tonight. Since we have new planning commissioners, so I have this one slide to brief some general information about the conditional use permit. As from the name of this permit, it should be easy to tell that the permit is for a specific use consideration as proposed from the applicant, and the city should determine whether it will be appropriate and compatible with the in the zoning district per the imposed conditions. And then when taking actions on the use permit, it shall be based on the conditional use findings that are codified in the municipal code. Planning Commission can approve with additional conditions or deny a use permit application through the hearing process. So back to this particular conditional use permit application, it is requested by the applicant, Elmer Lane, on behalf of the business owner, Hyperspace. The property owner is 129 First Street, LLC, who is different from the business owner. Hyperspace is an existing video arcade business operating at 127 First Street since 2018. The existing operation also received a conditional use permit approval from the Planning Commission in 2018. The original report can be found in the link provided in the agenda report for commissioners if anyone is curious for the background. Now, after about 3-year operation, due to the high customer demands and the relocation of the current fitness studio at 129 First Street, Hyperspace now is requesting to expand the arcade use at 129 First Street. With regard to the operation at 129 First Street, Hyperspace will keep the same arcade use as 127 First Street. Additionally, there is an existing kitchen that will be used to serve food for special events only. The operation will only occur at the first story. There is a second story that is currently unconditioned and will remain unconditioned and will not be a part of this conditional use permit and part of the future operation. The arcade will be open Mondays through Thursdays from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., Fridays from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. In terms of the employees, there will be a total of 2 to 4 employees working on site at any given time. In the zoning code, a minimum of 2 parking spaces are required based on the employee numbers. On the subject site, there are existing parking spaces. There are 6 parking spaces, including 1 ADA parking, access from the alleyway. So the subject site has more parking spaces than the minimum required parking. The full operational details can be found in the attachment B of the agenda report for commissioner's reference. For this slide, staff put the codified use permit findings. And for this application, in general, staff found that the operation of the current arcade use at 127 First Street has been an appropriate use to the downtown since 2018. Planning Division has not received any formal complaints against the business. The expansion to the tenant space at 129 First Street should continue contributing to the downtown's economical viability. Overall, staff found that with the imposed conditions of approval, the existing use for the expansion proposal to 129 First Street is consistent with all the findings. So with all the presented information, staff now recommend the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit 22-0002, subject to the findings and conditions listed in the attached resolution. Staff now concludes the presentation and more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff?
I do. Because you talk about a existing kitchen and the proposed food use, I don't see anything on the drawings that actually show kitchen equipment. So a couple questions. Is there kitchen equipment there? And then secondly, I didn't see anything talking about if they do have kitchen equipment and they are serving food, will they have to apply for a Santa Clara County health permit, which is relative to serving food and using a commercial kitchen? And if there is a kitchen, is there exhaust? You know, is there an exhaust through the roof? I didn't actually notice it on the aerial. So maybe the applicant, when they come on, can explain that to us, because it changes the use a little bit if it's a commercial kitchen and they're going to be serving food. And it also changes the permit status a bit because they would have to go to Santa Clara County Health. So I just didn't see it detailed. So I'd like some explanation about that.
So thank you for the question. I believe there is an existing kitchen currently on the first floor. Per the applicant's operation proposal, the existing kitchen would be further reduced in size and will only provide, I believe, catering food for the special events only. And you're right, the applicant is here and he probably can explain better for the kitchen use.
Okay.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Elmer Lin. I'm a registered architect and the applicant for this project. And regarding 129 First Street.
Mr. Lin, could you just hang on a second? we're going to give you a chance to talk, but right now, why don't we get through any other commissioner questions for staff? And then we'll go to the applicant side. So are there any other commissioners who have anything? Commissioner Benonato?
Yes,
And these are staff questions only, not comments, just questions.
Yeah, it's a question regarding the floor plan that was just shown, as well as is in the packet, floor plan A2.1A. I didn't see the connection to the other to the building next door on one of the diagrams. It's in one and it's not in the other. And I thought that was a little bit odd. I think it's where the storage room is, but I just wanted some clarity on which of these floor plans is accurate.
So there are 3 pages in the plan set. So the last plan sheet should show the proposed floor plan for the subject property at 129 First Street. And the second sheet, which is sheet number A1.1C. So the applicant did apply for the internal circulation in the resubmittal. This internal circulation was added in the resubmittal. Probably that was not shown in the initial submittal. That's why there were inconsistencies. And staff, I apologize for the inconsistency.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Commissioner Disney.
Yeah, this plan did not show elevations. So should we assume that the elevations are not changing, that the siding, there's wood siding on the front and the back of 129? Are we to assume that there will be no changes to the elevations?
That's my understanding. There's no exterior modification, just interior remodeling.
So does that mean there will not be hyperspace signage on 129?
For signage, which is a separate application from the conditional use permit, it is not required to have the applicant present the signage information as part of the CUP, because there is a separate administrative signage review process.
Okay, so this use permit tonight would not give them the right to put a sign on 129.
Right, unless a subsequent sign permit, if the applicant applied to the city and obtained the approval from the city, then they will be able to put a signage.
Okay, and then there's a planting strip, between the street and the sidewalk. And I'm assuming that's all city owned and they have no purview over what's in that planting strip, including the trees. Is that correct?
It depends on where's the property line. If you refer to the planting strip within the public right-of-way, then yes, that's the purview of the Public Works Department.
Well, yeah, I'm referring to the strip between the sidewalk and the street. I'm assuming that is in the public right-of-way. Is that the case?
Yeah, I believe so. They have the property line showed like right next to the fence on the side plan.
I'll
Okay.
just quickly comment. My understanding, based on other projects on First Street, down First Street, that is considered part of the public right of way. The planting strip would be.
Okay, and then I have another question. Who owns 127 First Street? And the reason why I ask is that it would seem odd to me to expand a business in this way and have 2 different landlords or 2 different property owners. It would seem to me to be somewhat difficult to run a business, with sort of the hopes that those 2 landlords are going to agree on the lease terms and so forth. So do we know the owner of 127 First Street?
So I believe it's the same owner as 129 First Street, but the applicant here, he can further confirm that.
Okay, and then my last question is, both sites have garbage kind of collection areas in the back. The one behind 127 is really just kind of a place to put garbage cans. And for 129, there is an enclosure. So is the plan to have all garbage end up in the enclosure now?
That was not provided or proposed as part of their application. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what their plan for the trash.
Perhaps
Okay.
that's a question for the applicant after he makes his presentation.
Well, my question then is, and I'm sorry I didn't like read everything in the design control, but you know, or chapter 14, but does 127's garbage system, in other words, not having the enclosure, does that comply with the zoning code in chapter 14?
So I believe because this is expansion at 129 First Street. So when we look at the 127 First Street, sorry, let me back up. So I don't think 127 First Street is part of this use permit application. I'm not sure currently if it's considered compliance or not compliance, because that's not only just the planning's purview for the trash collection. And if there's any future remodeling to 127 First Street, then the building division may look at the overall circulation for trash and determine if any improvements shall be made for 127 First. So for now, currently we don't. I think we cannot impose any improvements for 127 First Street if they're not doing any remodeling to 127 First.
Jolie, can you confirm that we are just looking at 129 First Street?
Yes, that's my understanding. We are just looking at the use permit for 129.
Okay.
And the other thing that I'd like to clarify is when you do a review for a use permit, you're only, I think, as staff mentioned earlier, you're looking at the use that is not allowed by right, but it's allowed by a use permit. And so you can add conditions so that you can make sure that it's compatible, or some of the concerns that you have about hours or noise or garbage, you can condition it, but you really don't look to the applicant. It's not personal to the applicant. This use permit will run with the land. So you want to make sure that this use as conditioned will not pose any health, safety, and welfare impacts.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Disney, did you have follow-up?
No, that helps. Thank you.
Anybody else before we turn it to the applicant? Okay, Mr. Lynn, I think you're up now. Steve, what's our usual time frame? How much time do we give them?
We give applicants 10 minutes, and then if there's any public comments, then they have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay.
As Leo had already sort of started to illustrate, food service wise, the existing kitchen at 129 is being dismantled and being removed. So in itself, inside the premises of 129 First Street, there will not be any food service or food preparation facilities. Moving to the next comment regarding the connection between the two spaces. The two arcades in each of the spaces will be operated by the same entity and with the same employees. Scott, who's on this at this hearing, is the manager of the arcade and will be the manager of all staff and facilities at both addresses. In terms of exterior, we're still reviewing the tenant improvement package for the ground floor at 129 First Street, which will also include the physical connection to 127 First Street. There are no proposed changes other than replacing the entrance door to 129 First Street to make it a double door and making it fully accessible, which it is a single door at this time. There's no changes to the rear elevation or the rear doors for that matter. And I will skip over the planting strip questions because that is correct. That is, as we understand it, it is the public right of way. In terms of the ownership of 127 and 129, it is a similar entity that owns both. And in terms of the trash enclosures, currently the trash bins, the recycling and compost and trash for 127 has a dedicated space in the garage. Building department have found it acceptable and has given provided final inspection and approval approximately a year ago. The trash enclosure at 129 will remain in use. So in fact, this single facility of the two buildings will have two dedicated trash areas. Are there any other questions or thoughts?
Go ahead, Shelley.
So, I think I just answered. I was looking at in terms of exiting, you know, you're still going to have a secondary exit out of 129, correct? Or because you're a contiguous business, and because it looks like, do we add the square footage all together for one business, or is this separate square footage? I'm asking that as a question to our staff, but you will still have an exit out the back of 129, correct?
That's correct. In fact, there will be two exits. The two exits that exist will still be in use.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Just to clarify, are you done, Mr. Lynn, are you done with the presentation? Then we will go to any other commissioner questions, or is there anything else you want to say before we do that?
No, I think I've
okay.
answered the questions.
Great. Any other commissioners would like to, any questions for the applicant before we open it up for public comments?
I have a quick one. Is there going to be, I think you said there's going to be no change to the elevation, just to be clear. Does that mean there won't be any hyperspace signage on 129?
I think right now we're still considering that, but within the tenant improvements. So there will be an opportunity for the city to review any proposed signage.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I think the signage is staff level. I think that's what staff said, that the signage permit would be a staff level. I guess Director Zorns can confirm that.
Yeah, I'm going to confirm that. That's going to be out of the purview of the Planning Commission. So tonight we're just talking about use. The site improvement as regards to signage would not be applicable for this discussion tonight.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? Okay, let's open it up for any public comments. Steve, can you manage how many we might have and how much time?
Sure. So at this time, if anybody would like to make a public comment for this item, we ask that you raise your hand using the reaction button or feature. If you can't find that, any sort of gesture would work in the reactions. And then if you can't find one of those, we'll open it up for anybody to unmute themselves. And if those people that want to make any comments, if you can do that so we can figure out how many people we have and adjust the time accordingly. I don't see any hands raised at the moment. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and provide a public comment, you're more than welcome to at this time.
Hi, my name's Scott Peltz. I'm the general manager. We had a bit of a presentation. If you guys would like to get a little more information about the business, if that's of interest to you guys.
How long of a presentation is it, Scott?
less than 5 minutes.
I think the applicant still has some time, and if you're the only speaker, I think we could go ahead and do that if it's okay with the rest of the commission. Any objections? Go for it.
Okay, great. Let me just pull this up here. Okay, so like I said, my name is Scott Peltz. I'm the general manager of Hyperspace. Hyperspace has been a business in Los Altos downtown for a long time, but we were formerly known as Area 151, but we've been a part of the community for over 10 years now. This particular location at 127 has just opened. We started the planning process in 2018, like was mentioned, but we just opened to the public this last February. So we've been open less than a year. But we've already noticed, especially coming out of COVID, that people are really looking for a place to make connections with other people in the community, to have someplace fun for a family to go to. We have a wide range of customers, from young children to adults. We get a lot of birthday parties, corporate groups, and things like that. And we're already noticing that there's a demand for larger space, where basically people are looking for even more, ways to have fun, and we're looking for more ways to provide that fun with more party areas for birthday parties and more arcade games and things like that. And so, the business hours will be pretty much same as they have been. We aren't open late. We have some days we're closed right now for maintenance, and then during the summer break we're open every day, pretty much 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Yeah, and then Elmer, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I can go to the next page. Yeah. So in terms of our building, the front yards will be cleaned up a little bit. There is a hedge on the left side of the front of 129 First Street that will be removed and dismantled. Consists of vegetation and a low stucco faced wall. Has nothing to do with the building. It's not structural. It's a remnant from the Italian restaurant, if any of you remember. So by removing that, we're able to create a physical connection with the two front yards, so to speak. The front yards will have the existing vegetation will remain. There's a large tree in front, as well as, of course, the handicap accessible pathway. All of that will remain. The fence will remain. The planting strip next to the sidewalk will remain. And it'll pretty much look the same. As you can see in the plan, the existing rear parking lot will remain, of course. There's handicap accessible parking in the back. And also we're going to propose new bike parking under the existing pergola. That is at the rear exit as well. So that's a good location for all the kids' bikes, which we know can be a little bit unruly when school's out. But the main arcade expansion will be in the existing main cycling studio, and with the kitchen being dismantled, the kitchen and offices being dismantled and be made into function rooms, such as karaoke rooms. The existing handicap accessible restrooms in the space will remain and be reused. And then you can sort of see right in the center of the plan, there's the connection that we're hoping to make to 127. Any thoughts or questions?
I have a question. I'm kind of a building wonk, building department wonk, and Jolie, this is kind of for you also. So it's two different property lines, correct? property line for 127, property line for 129, but we're now making this a contiguous space. So there's two questions in there. One is, health and safety, and I'm assuming the building department will give you, their thoughts on fire safety and life safety when you tie them together. But Jolie, I still don't understand how it could be a separate, I know it's another use permit, but wouldn't it be an extension of the existing use permit because it's the same business and now they're just coming through a common wall? So the conditions at 127 couldn't be different from 129. I'm so confused about that. And you're the expert at that.
Well, I think this use permit, and staff can correct me, it's a use permit to allow 129 to be a different use. I haven't thought about making it one use permit for both APNs. But
because of the physical connection and going across a property line. So they're tying together two properties. So I just like to understand that a little more.
Well, the one use permit, 127 has a use permit for that use. And now that they've expanded into 129, it needs a use permit. The one thing that the applicant could have done is applied for a use permit to apply to both of them. But I think because they're under slightly different ownerships, that they have different use permits. And I would ask the director to, or I don't know if Steve wants to chime in on this, but that's how I see that they went under two use permits because of the different ownership. So does staff have a comment on that?
Can I just ask Jolie, and so because there is slightly different ownership, because the use permit runs with the property, not with the applicant.
Right.
Or the operator of the business, that's why you actually do need to have two different use permits.
That's how I see it. And they're compatible uses. It's not like the two parcels are being merged. They're going to stay separate legal parcels. And now to provide for the use, they need a use permit. That's how I saw this. And so it is a little strange. I don't know if the director has something else to add to this, or if Steve does, or
I don't have anything to add other than I think it does help reinforces that there's two. So if there becomes conflict with one of the spaces, the other one is, there's ways for enforcement action. I've seen it done both ways. I think this way gives us a little bit more teeth if something were to become more problematic in the future versus an amendment and just an expansion under one use permit. So it's a matter of city process and how the preference was to proceed with it with the initial application. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's just if we were to expand the one use permit, it would run under one, and then potentially the validity of that would be pulling it in the future, where this would be two, and if one became conflict, we would be able to do that. Again, also because there is separate ownership, there could be the potential for a different owner to sell off part of the building and then that not be leasable in the future potentially. So, there's also that. So this again helps to reinforce that severability component to the two spaces since they are adjoining.
Yeah, and if the property was sold separately, it would be subject to this use permit. And if the use was not the use that was allowed under this use permit, they would be coming in for a new use permit if the use wasn't allowed by right. So it does give the city more control of maybe these two parcels. Let's say this new use isn't that successful and that owner moves on. The new person or the new owner coming in would need to comply with the use permit or get an amended use permit or do something that's allowed by right. So I agree with Nick. It does give the city control.
There's another feature, which is that these are actually, from my observation this afternoon, two completely separate buildings. They do not actually have a common wall. There's a gap of a few inches between the side walls that are adjacent to each other. So they are, in fact, completely separate properties. And I think that's the feature here that has to, that, as Jolie was saying, you have to provide for two separate places, which is what they are, physically and legally. So.
Susan, I think you're muted. I had another question.
Sorry about, yes, I was. I see you, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see you had it. Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Joe?
Thank you. This was the first I heard of the bike parking on the presentation, and I was just curious what the planned usage is. Are the kids to park bikes in the back and then somehow get around to the front, or will there be a rear entrance that they're allowed to come in through?
So I can take that. Yeah, there will be a rear entrance available to them as well. We'll have bike parking both in front and in back. We have current bike parking in front at 127, and this will just be additional in the back. And there's a door right there.
So where the existing pergola and tables are now, that's where this bike parking would be envisioned?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Disney?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. If Hyperspace chooses to later redesign the facade to unify 127 and 129, and in doing so, they create a business facade that exceeds 50 feet, would they have to come back and apply for 2 new use permits?
So Commissioner Disney, so if they just want to modify the exterior facade, and per the zoning code, if they're not if they will not change the overall height, not increase the overall height, they're not adding any additional square footage to the existing building, they're not necessarily required to go through any public hearing for the modification. And also, if they're not excuse me, if they're not changing the proposed use or the approved use from today, they're not required to come back for a conditional use permit.
All right, so what I understand, I mean, someone's going to have to help me with this, but what I understand the code to say is that building facades on First Street are not to exceed 50 feet. The module, the maximum, I think it's called module width is 50 feet. So if they come back and they redesign their facade and it reads visually like an elevation or a storefront that is 100 feet wide instead of 50 feet wide, wouldn't that disturb kind of the pattern of the street? And wouldn't that violate the design controls in the zoning codes?
Can we just step back for a second? I think we're getting into commissioner comments now, but we haven't actually officially closed the public hearing to public comments. So we kind of got a little off track because we went back and forth with the applicants. So I'd like to get us back following the procedure, and then we can get back to your questions. Can we just confirm, are there any other public comments to be had tonight on this? So Steve, it sounds like we don't have anybody else, so we can close the public hearing part of this, and then we can go back to your question, Commissioner Disney, and your comment. Does that seem right, Steve?
Yeah, so again, if anybody has a public comment, if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself, then we can give you time to speak. I do not see any hands raised, and I don't hear anybody unmuting themselves at this time.
So I think we close the public hearing, and then let's go to commissioner comments. And then I think Commissioner Disney, let's go back to where you were. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure we are following the protocol.
That's totally fine. So I don't think I'm going to restate the question.
Right. So,
yeah.
So Commissioner Disney, I'm wondering the standard you found, they are from the design control section?
I think it's 14.44.130. I read the design control, and it says that a module is to be no more than 50 feet. So architectural elements signaling individual businesses are not to extend by more than 50 feet. And so if Hyperspace came and redesigned the facade to unify these two parcels, you would have a business facade that exceeds that 50 foot maximum width. It would end up looking like a consolidation of lots. I think that could be disruptive to the pattern that we have along First Street. So I'm wondering if there's anything I'm missing here. Would the staff review a change to the elevation and ensure that that 50-foot pattern is retained?
Can I ask a kind of a clarifying question to what Commissioner Disney's asking? If these were two completely separate owners who decided to do the exact same thing that she's concerned about, would the city have any right to intervene in that situation? I think we're sort of getting a little bogged down in the fact that there seems to be some common ownership or some common purpose here, which doesn't really, in my mind, legally change what they're asking for with a conditional use permit, but perhaps I'm wrong. I understand your concern, Commissioner Disney, but I'm not sure we can tie two separate parcels together because of that. Or maybe we can, Jolie. Tell me.
Well, if the two property owners wanted to do two facades that related to each other, I'm not sure what we could do with that if each facade was only 50 feet. It's not going to be like signage over the two properties, you know, but if they did two facades or two designs or something that sort of matched each other, I mean, and it didn't need a building permit or it didn't need design review, I'm not sure what we could do, but I mean, I haven't really thought this one through. This is a very interesting question.
Jolie, could you go back to something you said and please clarify? You said two different building owners. Did you mean two different business owners? Because we understand that both properties are owned by the same entity, but there's two different business owners. Is that correct?
So this is Jan, Steph. So I believe the business owners are the same. They're all the Hyperspace management team. The property owner, as I heard from the applicant, they're slightly different in names, but they are the same entity, if I heard that correctly.
So I'm going to interject a little bit. So one, we're talking about use, not the building. I do understand that there's the potential for potential lot consolidation and lot mergers, lot ties. There's a variety of different essentially subdivision controls that could potentially come into play in the future. However, that's not a part of this application. I think that's something that would be a triggering point potentially to be able to do some of the certain facade improvements or enhancements that are being discussed right this second. However, not applicable to the application before the commission this evening. I'm going to lastly say the provision that Commissioner Disney did find is correct in the way that she is reading it. I have it in front of me right now. However, one thing I do want to remind the commission of is that particular design control has only been codified since last year. That's a new provision in the code, which was adopted in late last year. So this might be a good example of something that I've discussed previously with individual commissioners of certain design characteristics or things that might not really actually be working once we actually start trying to implement them into day-to-day development activity, because these are unforeseen consequences of decisions of design controls that we're not able to actually see come alive. So this is something that we would need to evaluate in the future if and when it were to actually come up with an application that would require that.
And one thing you brought up, the subdivision controls, the city does not have an automatic merger ordinance. So if two properties that are adjacent to each other are owned by the same property or the same entities, it doesn't mean merger. It does not mean that the two parcels become one. That's another issue. So
I guess, you know, I think it's a little weird that there's going to be two arcades next to each other and with two separate entrances. And I think it's possible that someone might ask the question, well, gee, why don't we create one entrance and you know, make it one big arcade? But I'm wondering if, okay, could that even be done with the design controls that we have? I mean, it sounds like you can't really have a module of more than 50 feet. So, you know, regardless of what they want or who the owners are, it doesn't sound, I mean, I just want to confirm this, that they cannot consolidate those two 50-foot modules into a 100-foot module, because in doing so, wouldn't they violate the design controls and the zoning codes? That's just really my question.
Susan, can I interject something here?
Yes, please.
Yeah. First of all, I think we're getting, as Nick has tried to point out, we're getting off field here. This is a speculative question. These design controls were intended in the first instance for new construction, and we're talking about here about what might be a sort of superficial development on the front of the buildings, and whether that in some way violates these design controls. The question of a remodel or any kind of sort of superficial rebuilding as opposed to new construction was not addressed when these design controls were brought into place. It is a question, I think, that is going to have to be addressed by this commission and by others. And I would be very cautious about speculating about the possibility of this or that happening in these circumstances. Until we're faced with the question, we really don't know what the answer is. And we're here just to decide whether or not to allow these people to have an arcade in this space. What might happen or could happen, or one imagines would happen, is really not relevant to that question. So I'd like I personally would like to see us talk about the space and not about what might happen on the outside of the buildings.
Are there any comments about relating to the question before us? As was pointed out, it really is focusing on the use permit, not design issues.
I'd like to just say one thing. So when you expand an existing business at the expense of another one, to me, it defeats the purpose of the district, which is to provide for a full range of retail, office, and services appropriate to a downtown. So if every business in downtown did this, we would have half the businesses that we have today. I think that would be a really big problem. Now, I think we have to take this application in context and look at, okay, how vital or how much vitality, how much commercial vitality is there on First Street? It's not, you know, there's been a lot of turnover in this area. And so I guess I'm feeling like I want to approve this, except I don't want to see businesses do things that do elevation changes that read like a consolidation of lots, whether it's legally a consolidation or not. That's not my issue. It's just, I don't want it to read like a consolidation of lots, because I think it would really degrade the pattern in downtown. And I think it might kind of open the gates for other businesses that are seeking more square footage. So that's really just my concern is, you know, is this really a good, you know, are we setting a precedent, I guess, by allowing businesses to expand in this way? And what does that do to the elevation if they are able to create modules that exceed the 50-foot maximum?
Okay. Anybody else have any comments relating to the issue before us tonight?
Is this the time that we can add to the conditions, Susan?
I believe it is, unless Jolie or Steve tells me it's not.
Okay, I would like to add something to the CUP because I don't see, I'd like to get some more detail on the plans relative to removing the existing kitchen. So it's detailed on the plan that they will not have a kitchen and the existing kitchen is going to be removed. So if the architect could go ahead and detail that, you know, removal of all kitchen equipment and exhaust and that will be as part of this use permit and no commercial kitchen, you know, which under the ordinances would have to go up to Santa Clara County Health will be permitted. So I want to amend the use permit to add that.
Okay, and that's something that staff could then just review.
Before it goes, if we push it through and it goes to council, I'd like to have that wording in there and have the drawings changed. The council has been really clear that if we make these changes, they want to see them on the plan before it gets to them.
This would stay with planning commission unless appealed to council.
It would. Okay, then it's even more important that we put that condition in.
Okay.
I just don't want to see it becoming all of a sudden becoming a big restaurant space. And then
I assume the applicant has no problem with doing that.
No.
Okay.
And
great.
I'm trusting that the building department is going to do their job when looking at the new interior connection because 127 as well as 129 has to have a building permit. I still sort of bothers me about the contiguous space and exiting, but building and fire, I'm sure we'll be looking at this.
That's how we understand.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners have comments on this? Okay, then I think we are ready. If anyone would like to make a motion, ready for a vote.
I'll be happy to make the motion if you want.
Yes.
And I have a question. I think this is a Jolie question. Since this is both the approval of the conditional use permit and a CEQA exemption, do we need to do that in two parts or can we do it all as one?
You can do it as one. You're going to approve the use permit CUP 220002 as amended, as the condition was amended, and then that that the project was found to be exempt from environmental review under section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines.
Okay, so we can do it as a single motion. All right.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to move that we approve the conditional use permit 22-0002, which is a conditional use permit for the expansion of an existing commercial recreation use at 129 First Street, as with the additional condition that has been suggested by Commissioner Doran concerning the plans and the indication that there is no commercial or other kitchen space within 129. Did I say that correctly, Shelley? That's what you wanted?
Yes. I'm so sorry, but I have to just bring this back up. It's application for the expansion of an existing commercial recreational use. And we've been talking about it being two separate permits. So I don't know how you change the language in this paragraph, but it doesn't read like we've been told it needs to read.
I read what was printed. It can do
Yes, I know you did.
129 First Street, and then you would like to make a change to the conditions. You'd like to make an additional condition, and
Yes.
that's the part that I was referring to.
Yes.
And the condition, as you stated, was to remove from the drawings any indication of the kitchen space because they intend to take that out, and that there will be no additional kitchen space added to replace it.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
got what you wanted in?
Yes.
Okay. And that in doing this, we find that this is exempt pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15303. So that's the motion. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second.
Okay.
All right. Steve, could you call the roll on this?
I sure can. Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinle,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardo,
Yes.
Commissioner Disney,
Yes.
Commissioner Doran,
Yes.
and sorry, did I say Commissioner Steinle?
You did.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Getting
Susan.
out of
Susan's the only one left.
and Chair Menzinger.
Yes.
That's approved on a vote of 6-0.
Okay, great. All right, moving on. We have commissioners' reports and comments. Does any commissioner have a report to make or any comments?
I was monitoring the last city council meeting, and I don't have anything to report. There was eight consent items. And they all voted on them. So it was a very quick, very short meeting. So nothing to report on that.
You were lucky.
Yes. Wasn't 1 o'clock in the morning.
For our two new members, you may have been told that each of us are assigned certain days to be sort of the planning commission ears and eyes at city council meetings. And Steve, are we coming out with a new schedule of that, or where are we in that?
Yeah, we should create a new calendar since we have new commissioners. So we'll get on that and send that out to the commission. And then amongst the commissioners, if you have any conflicts, you can just work amongst yourselves as far as trading commission dates.
Thank you. Next item, if there's nothing else for reports and comments, I think we got a potential future agenda items. So Steve, that's probably you.
Well, at this time, I don't have anything specific to report as far as future items. We do have a couple, mixed use or multifamily residential projects coming through staff review. So those will make it to the commission in the future. I don't quite know when. And I don't know if Nick wants to mention anything about upcoming stuff with regards to housing element, if there's anything on the calendar.
Yep, so I will just jump in and inform the commission. The commission will be seeing the housing element on January 5th. So right after the turn of the year, first week of January. So please mark your calendars. It is very important that you all are in attendance for that meeting. If you are not for some reason, please make sure that you advise me as early as possible so we can discuss alternatives potentially. That will be a virtual meeting. So really, there's kind of the very big flexibility. So if people are traveling, please try to allocate time away for that meeting. As of right now, I intend on that meeting only being for the housing element and not having any other private development applications moving forward for that evening, just so that the commission, as well as anybody that's on the call, is also well informed. We will be having a study session with the city council on the housing element. So specifically to the two new commissioners, it would be very good for you to observe the study session on November 29th with the city council, just to kind of get as much of a background and understanding of where we're at in the process, because the next time this does come forward will be on January 5th to the commission, where you will be asked to make your recommendation to the council for adoption prior to the January 31st deadline. So it is going to be coming up very quickly, and staff is moving and putting a lot of hours and time into this in order to make sure we meet our statutory requirements for the state. And I will obviously just share is that we're in very good standing. Our letter was definitely we have some work to do to make some amendments to the document. However, it is a very well positioned letter for us to be able to accomplish that prior to our due dates. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly and we can discuss accordingly.
Director Zorns, did you have a time for that study session?
As of right this second, it is forecasted to start at 5:30. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. That's positive news on the housing element.
Yes, so very excited.
Considering San Francisco is about to get sued.
Yeah, no
because
kidding.
they're resisting. So we're in better shape than that, fortunately.
Shelley, you had your hand up?
Sometime next year, can we look at mechanical parking structures? We've been talking about it for a long time, and since we have a lot more housing coming in, I'd like to at least have everyone be educated on how the mechanical lifts work, so we don't kind of run through what we did last year.
Yeah, we had talked about maybe going to see some, and
Yeah, before I left, I thought the planning commission was going to go on a site visit, like a field trip, and
Yeah, let's
go
go on a field trip.
and go see. We have to notice it under the Brown Act, but you can go off-site and go and see it, but we'd post it. But I thought the planning commission did go do that, but maybe I'm mistaken. But they are very, very interesting. And yeah, so we can arrange something, I think.
we have all be interested if you can find a place where we can go. And
I can find one that's close by. Yeah.
We might have some connections now with the neighboring cities. So with our new liaison.
Yeah, that's great.
So, and it's probably for the best that we haven't actually done the site visit up until this point, because there are some provisions that did change in the CBC that is being adopted, so which will go into effect come January 1. So there might be some particulars of things that you could have seen in regards to some things that were approved that were more of a conditional approval for those mechanical parking lifts, where now some of them are actually by virtue of being a ministerial action. So it's good to fully understand them for sure, but it'll also just help to be able to clarify once we do a little bit more digging into some of the new regulations of the 2022 CBC.
Okay, so we'll leave it to you to figure out where to go and when to do it to make the most sense. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay, anything?
Oh, sorry. One thing I just wanted to mention was I know former Commissioner Bodnar was discussing this, I think last year, about visiting projects that we've approved and just seeing what the end result is compared to, when we approve them. They did it as an exercise and it really helped them. So now that we have, new commissioners, I think it might be good in the next year. I know there's a couple on First Street that are probably going to be done next year. So just something to think about if staff wants to maybe put that on a calendar date. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? If not, it is 8:12 and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Good job, Susan.